The estimated yearly tuition at Yale University is about $63,000. And that, of course, would include your meal plan, estimated books, and maybe student activities fees and things of that nature. $62,000. If you include the board, books, and everything, $84,500. Call it $85,000 a year to go to Yale. If you're going to Yale, you are, by definition, one of the most privileged individuals on the planet, bar none. Whether your family has the money to pay that kind of money for you to attend the college, or you have it, or you've received a scholarship worth that kind of money, you are insanely privileged. Yale University is also the home of many, the learning grounds, I suppose, of many law students. And it is also home of some of the biggest idiots I've ever seen in my life. This happened last week. More than 100 students at Yale Law attempted to shout down a bipartisan panel on civil liberties by intimidating attendees and causing so much chaos that the police had to be called to escort the panelists out of the building. This is via Aaron Sibarium. I hope I'm saying that right. The March 10th panel was hosted by Yale Federalist Society, featured Monica Miller of the Progressive American Humanist Association and Kristen Wagoner of the Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, a conservative nonprofit that promotes religious liberty. Both groups had taken the same side on a 2021 Supreme Court case involving legal remedies for the First Amendment violations. The purpose of the panel was to illustrate that a liberal atheist and a conservative Christian could find common ground on free speech issues. All right? This is, by and large, should be seen as a great thing, right? It was, quote, it was pretty much the most innocuous thing you could have talked about, a member of the Federalist Society said. That didn't stop nearly 120 student protesters from crowding in the event. When the professor at the law school, Kate Stith, began to introduce Wagoner, the protesters, who outnumbered the audience members, rose in unison, holding signs that went after her group. The nonprofits have argued and won several Supreme Court cases establishing religious exemptions from civil rights laws, most famously the Masterpiece Cake Shop versus the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. I believe that cake shop had to win that lawsuit twice, if I remember. There was basically this meme, this thing that was happening with gay couples were going to religious bakeries and targeting them for social media outrage because they didn't want to make their wedding cake. Look, any business has the right to refuse customers for whatever reasons they want. And ultimately, I would make the cake, but I am not a super religious person. I am a dirty capitalist, and I wouldn't want to turn business away. But that's their decision. And then they tried to sue them and bury them in legal fees. It was all a huge, ridiculous stunt. Anyway, the nonprofit argued and won several Supreme Court cases. As they stood up, protesters began to antagonize members of the Federalist Society, forcing them to pause their remarks. One protester told a member of the conservative group that she would literally fight you, B-word. Sounds like a good Yale student spending $85,000 a year on education, according to audio and video obtained by the Free Beacon. And I'm going to show you the audio and video because it exists. With the fracas intensifying, she reminded the students that Yale has a free speech policy which bars any protest that interferes with speakers' ability to be heard and community members to listen. Essentially, look, you can protest quietly. You could even probably go up to like the Q&A and say something, but you can't just shout somebody down and not give them a chance to speak. I think that's, at least in my opinion, a pretty good policy to have. I mean, it supports free speech. I like it. When the protesters heckled her in response, several with their middle fingers raised, she told them to grow up. The comment elicited jeers from the protesters, who began shouting at the panelists and insisting the disturbance was, of course, their free speech. Eventually, she told them that if the noise continued, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Let's take a look at some of these Yale students, right? These high $80,000 a year. I see all of them wearing masks. $85,000 a year. This is how they act. These are your future lawyers, by the way.
disrupting the free speech.
You're disrupting us. Disrupted it by saying something.
Nobody wants them to be there that are there for the panel. Then basically these losers basically ruined what is actually a great lesson, is that, you know, even though people can disagree, they they disagree on some things, they can come together on others. This is a lesson that is sorely lacking in today's youth and in places particularly on Twitter.
I remind you, Yale is committed to protecting freedom of expression and peaceful dissent. Interfering with the speaker's
Aren't you a
ability
First
to
Amendment
speak, that
professor?
includes me, includes them,
Then talk.
is not permitted. So please refrain from noise, activity, or otherwise disrupting the speech.
It's not our fault you don't command the room. Professor, stand to expression.
Why are they all out of shape too?
That's the first time I'm telling you this. If it continues, I'll tell you again. You're welcome to be outside. You're welcome to be outside to ask questions when we get to the question period of the event. And I hope that you all.
Normally we're not permitted to ask questions.
On its website.
Buy a bra, lady. Jeez. Anyway, what ends up happening is the speakers that are there feel so unsafe that they had to get police escort out of there. And also, they claim that they were accosted by these $85,000 a year Yale University students. This article, Yale University should hold students who disrupted free speech panel accountable. Yale Law didn't say whether protesters would be held accountable or not. A free speech expert says Yale School Law should students who disrupt a free speech panel on March 10th be held accountable. The Yale University Federalist Society, we already talked about that. 120 student protesters showed up at the event with signs reading F fascist, tired of this ass, and be less mean. These are $85,000 a year, by the way. They're paying for this. According to Yale University, Zach Austin, president of Yale's Federalist Society chapter, and Wagoner both said that the protesters were disruptive, inappropriate, which the protesters dispute. In the audio from the event, members were yelling over the speaker at the event. Protect trans kids, students could be heard yelling. What does that have to do with anything? This is the thing. I could forgive letting your passion kind of get to you a little bit and maybe be a little emotional, but at least what does that have to do with anything? Protect trans kids. What does it have to do with two people who are talking about how one is an atheist and one is a religious or conservative, and they came to agree, and that's a lesson we can all walk from. And then you have some idiot whose parents are paying $100K a year from school yelling, protect trans kids, be less mean. What does that even mean? What are you doing? I can forgive emotion. What I can't forgive is these are our future lawyers, and they're absolutely idiotic. And you see, Wall Street Journal even writes, Yale Law Students force censorship. Maybe those who try to shout down speakers shouldn't be getting judicial clerkships. It may actually be affecting their long-term abilities to get jobs. 100 or so students heckled and tried to shout down one panel of the Federalist Society members in attendance. One protester told a member in a conservative legal group that she would literally fight you, B-word, according to the Washington Free Beacon, which obtained an audio and videotape of the ruckus. The speakers were escorted from the event by police for their safety. It's not too much to say that the students were a political mob. No punishment seems forthcoming from Yale Law School, despite its ostensible policy barring protests that disrupt free speech. But the event prompted senior judge Lawrence Silberman of the Court of Appeals for Washington, D.C., to write the following letter to all of his fellow Article III judges last week. Quote, the latest events at Yale Law School in which students attempted to shout down speakers participating in a panel discussion on free speech prompts me to suggest that students who are identified as those willing to disrupt any such panel discussion should be noted. All federal judges and federal judges all federal judges and all federal judges are presumably committed to free speech, should carefully consider whether any student so identified should be disqualified for potential clerkships. That should get some attention at Yale and other law schools. The woke young men and women might not care about the First Amendment, but they care about their careers. Judicial clerkships are a plum postgraduate position that open a path to jobs at prominent law firms and in state and federal government, and later to powerful judgeships. Appellate court clerkships in particular are highly prized and are often a stepping stone to clerk for a Supreme Court justice. Some readers may think these students should be forgiven for the excesses of youth, but these are adults, not college sophomores. They are law students who will soon be responsible for protecting the rule of law. The right to free speech is the bedrock principle of the United States Constitution. If these students are so blinkered by ideology that they can't tolerate a debate over civil liberties on campus, the future of the American legal system is in jeopardy. Individual judges choose their clerks, and no doubt some will figure they can educate these progressive protesters, but Judge Silberman's letter should, if nothing else, warn these students that there are consequences coming for being campus censors. I love it. Consequences. These are people that are, to be in law school, these people are probably in their late 20s or early 30s, right? Maybe not. You have 3, 4, 5 years of college, and then you probably do more. They're in their mid 20s. They're not 15. They're not 14, right? Absolute great. Here, conservative lawyer slams Yale for cowering to the mob after free speech panel derailed. These people, $100,000 a year. I can't wait. I hope they all, this is not a mistake of youth. I hope they're all on a list, and I hope a lot of judges, a list for judges to reconsider before they give them those cushy jobs that will likely be important to preserving my civil liberties and yours. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.